Welcome to Hair in the Hawthorn. My name's Kate Ray and I'm your host. Got Neil back on the couch with me, which is always good. And we have a mutual friend of ours with us this evening. We've got Paul Goddard, who put us both under. Gonna leave it there for a minute. Gonna leave it there. For anybody who's seen Paul's channel, wants to see us being put under, we'll give you the link in a little while. But hello, Paul. Hello, Neil. How are you both doing?
Well, I'm doing really good. Delighted to be here. Looking forward to it. I always like seeing these interviews on YouTube, so it's lovely to be part of it. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm really pleased to be back with you, Kate. You know, you do these videos without me, I feel very left out. But
I know.
I get
It's you.
over it.
I know you do, but it's the spooky people that I know scare you. But you know Paul, so you're not going to be terrified by the whole paranormal thing with Paul about, which is good. So I like to start, Paul, with asking people about their journey into the paranormal. I know that's very much where your passion lays in the world of paranormal. We will come on to things like past life regression, but where did it all begin? What was the kind of the spark for you?
It's probably about 8 or maybe before then. I remember there's a classic ghost book, and actually, I remember when I was at Parameet, Haunted magazine, were reselling it because they'd like rebranded it. It's one with ghosts on the top of it. It's somewhere, I don't know exactly where it is. I'm buying that in a bookshop. I don't know exactly when it started. I know that I used to think when I was younger that there was a lady haunting the room. One, because a lady died in the front room, but also as well, not when we were there, but you know, previous owners. That would have been unfortunate, wouldn't it? So yeah, we had I had that, but I think because I had hypnopompic or hypnagogic imagery, and it sometimes happen. It's when you're falling asleep, and I always get confused which one it is, but literally you kind of see like weird visions and things like that. So, and it's when you come out sometimes as well. So that I think might have been some of the things that I was seeing. But I do remember quite a spooky experience when I was young, and literally I was just going to bed, and I was in that sort of stage, not when you're drifting off and you're in that twilight, literally when you're just lying there and you know you're not going off to sleep at that point. And I suddenly heard my name being called, and the way it sounded was more like, oh, it was like that. Absolutely terrified me at the time. Somebody else that I was talking about it later said it was like when they had experience, like somebody talking to you down the tube. And for probably a decade afterwards, I would always used to fall asleep with my head under the covers. Now I did used to get the hypnagogic imagery, and it would be like strange spirals, sometimes just kind of seeing patterns and things like this. And I think that might have been what I was confusing and mixing, because I have seen people before with these images as I'm just going off to sleep. But that, I know I was fully conscious, fully awake. It only happened once. And yeah, it really did kind of disturb me for quite some time. I'm totally over it now, but I think it was about a decade before I could actually just fall asleep normally without having the covers over my head.
I'm smiling because it's really nice to hear somebody admit that, because I think I was probably about 30 years old before I could sleep with the light off. You know, I'm not kidding. I mean, these things really do affect you, don't they? And
they do.
And especially if you've got an active imagination on top of everything else. So you're having these sort of intersleep state experiences that you know, just doing crazy things with your mind as well. But then when you have something that's more tangible on top of that, it kind of cements it to be into what on earth was that? Talking about that, do you think there is a correlation between people who are more sensitive to those kind of subconscious things that go off within the mind? Do you think there's a correlation between that and those who have these kind of experiences?
I wouldn't be surprised. I keep an open mind about everything. Quite interesting, there's various suggestibility tests that you can do in hypnosis. And because I used to do lots of ghost walks with my good friend Lynn Sindri, brilliant. But I started to do, when I started to learn hypnosis, some suggestibility tests with people. I've never made anybody do anything crazy, but kind of like the one hand getting heavier with like a heavy bucket filling it with water, the height with the hand with the helium balloon lifting it higher, hands stuck together, those sorts of things. And I was kind of wondering, maybe the more suggestible people are the ones that maybe get more of the experiences, but it ended up just being completely and utterly random. So I think that is interesting, that there's good possibilities that these people, aren't so suggestible, and they really are generally seeing something. I mean, I've seen some strange things in my time. So yeah, I think that they really have seen something quite profound.
So you went from, I think, was it the Osborne, A Book of Ghosts, that kind of kicked it off for
Might
you?
have been that one, yeah. It's quite a thin volume, but it had
Yes.
some pictures of ghosts in there. The classic supposed monk in front of the altar, that's the one. So that must be the Osborne one. I haven't seen it for years, but I'm sure it will turn up somewhere at some point.
It did. It kind of made a resurrection, didn't it? I think it's the Osborne one, and I feel quite left out, because as a child I never even saw that. Everybody else's bloody library at school had a copy.
Yes.
Ours didn't. So how did you go from having that experience, finding that book? Where then did that lead you into sort of being spurred on to want to know more?
More and more books. If there was ever a program about the paranormal on TV, I made sure that I would watch it. If it was on late, my parents would record it for me to watch back afterwards, because I just couldn't get. I mean, it wasn't just ghosts, UFOs, big cat phenomena, all sorts of cryptids, anything about the unusual I was just drawn to. I think at that time it was mostly books, and I was always really drawn to looking at the pictures. So that was kind of where I was with the paranormal for quite some time, just enjoying it, set back. And then I kind of started getting interested slightly in hypnosis. I really used to enjoy the program Strange But True, and they did a couple ones about regression, which I just got my imagination going. And then I've always been interested in hypnosis, so I kind of tried to hypnotize people when I was at school. Not particularly successfully, I must say. And one of the problems with that is because the only direction that I got was a little bit which I saw on television, but knowing how television works now, they never showed you the full induction. So I kind of just knew the middle bit. And there were a couple of times I was hypnotizing children at school. I'm getting somewhere, and they'd go, right, now what else? And I haven't really got them under at all. But I love Strange But True. And then after a while in the paranormal, I kind of sort of got interested in playing snooker, and also as well with snooker, my first introduction probably to being hypnotized myself was Paul Goddard's Paul McKenna's sensational snooker, and anybody that's seen me on the snooker table will know I've not actually listened to it for quite some time, but that was kind of where I was going. And then I went to go to lots of teams sort of playing around. And then I think paranormal television started to come back, particularly with, they had Most Haunted, they had Colin Fry, they had the Psychic Detective, those sorts of things. And then more other ones were beginning to come on as well. What was it now? Biggest Ghost Hunt, I think it was called, something like that, around that sort of time. And that really thought, actually, I'd like to go out and do this again. So it was around my early 20s that I started doing investigations. I started doing investigations because I was involved in a community radio station called Stroud FM, and I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I thought I'd do something about ghosts. So I kind of went on a vigil for the radio station. So it's basically a community radio station for 3 days, and there was like the first part, which is people's ghost stories, which is more traditional things, just interviewing people, their ghost stories. And I did another night which was about mediums. So I was basically taking mediums around haunted locations. And then the final one was actually doing a proper ghost hunt myself. And then I got involved with the Myers Paranormal Society. Lynn was in that group to begin with, so we became friends at that stage. So that's when I got into it and started spending then a lot of my weekends in cold, dank, dirty places. Also nightclubs as well, which were haunted, or pubs, just waiting for something to jump out and say boo.
I can see Neil shaking his head there, going, "Why do you guys do this? Oh, we are so going to have to take you out on a ghost hunt, Neil."
No. I'll come out and I'll just sort of sit in the pub, and you can get on with it, and come back and tell me what you did. It's I have to say that has never really appealed to me. I like watching it, and it's some of it's extremely interesting and evocative of what might be happening, but the actual process of doing it, not because I'm scared, Kate, not because I'm afraid, but just because it's just just so that's just me. It's so I have every respect for people such as yourselves who will go out and gather the data. But my sorry, this is slightly off course, but I sent a film through a YouTube film to Kate the other day called The Stone Tapes. And
that one, BBC thing.
Sorry,
was it BBC drama?
Yeah, but 1975.
Yeah.
And I love watching 1970s dramas, whether it's paranormal or not. And that was a bunch of ghost hunters, obviously 1975, so they've got massive flares on, the big hair, and it was a very interesting drama. Obviously it's a dramatized version of what you're talking about doing, but with all the big 1970s kit that they go in and find this ghost, and of course it all kind of comes unraveled in the end. But it's so anyone watching, go onto YouTube, find the Stone Tapes, and you'll have a jolly good hour and a half. But watching something like that is about as close as I'm going to come to.
Neil, that's exactly what it's like. We all go out in big flares. We all have bits of equipment that the size of a small bungalow. That's exactly what happens. You love it.
I'm delighted to hear it. Delighted to hear it.
Anyway, we're going off piste here, definitely. So we went into that. So you went into the investigative side through for the radio station. So where then did that lead? Where did the kind of the hypnosis and the paranormal, were they two separate things running concurrently, or did they immediately kind of merge for you?
Well, at the time when I was doing the ghost investigations, I was working at the Gloucester Guildhall, it's not just a music venue. It was once known as an art centre, but it's kind of slightly gone more mainstream now. But there'll be a lot of bands, a lot of music, sometimes DJ events, because I just love music and still love music now. So my goal was to either be a radio DJ or a nightclub DJ. And I did get some success in some nightclubs and in some bars, but what my goal was to do like the really big sort of super clubs, or go out to Ibiza and be a DJ there. But I was always held back with a fear of rejection. So it was actually, my mum got me the book, Paul McKenna, Change Your Life in 7 Days. And it really did make a big difference. I mean, listening to hypnosis, because Paul McKenna's book is mostly about NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, doing those exercises, I just felt a completely different person, lost my shyness in approaching people, felt quite confident when I went in and spoke to the managers, because quite often it's not just, are you interested in, because at those stages it's first of all cassette tapes, and then given CDs, the manager had to listen to it, but you had to go back, and had to go back, and had to go back until either they would swear at you or they would say, yes, do come in. So I didn't like that side of things. But it was still always my passion to really get into the music and into being a DJ. But then my dad became quite unwell with cancer, and he was listening to a hypnosis CD that we got to him in the shops, and he absolutely loved it. And we were hoping that maybe, because I think with doctors kind of say you shouldn't give people false hope, but I also think it's wrong to give people false hopelessness. And basically, It got to the stage where there's nothing else we can do. And through listening to the CD, he felt really happy. He didn't feel like he was an ill person. In fact, some of the staff at the hospital would actually come in and see him because he had such a glowing character about him. They would sort of say their problems to him, and he would kind of sort of chat to them a bit, and they would end up leaving feeling quite better. And he actually had lost the use to actually, I mean, not totally lost, but because he had cancer and it was in his spine, it was pressing on. He couldn't write properly, and literally it was beginning to get a bit stronger. A little bit of feeling was coming back in his legs, not much, but just a little bit. And it was kind of like maybe something's happening there, but unfortunately, because he was in bed, a blood clot got me and it went to his lung and he passed away from it. But because he was in that great frame of mind, I was saying, well, actually, this is what I want to do with my life, because I still love the DJing, but you know, that in that day, it was taking around great big vinyl records with you. You have your arms be dragging on the floor afterwards, and you know, it was late nights, loud music. I mean, I've got a tiny bit of tinnitus now from where I've been involved with, so it was a more healthier direction to go in. And you know, it was, I would say DJing and the music was my love, but it became my passion in helping people. And because hypnosis, I got into, did a course in NLP, a course in hypnosis, and part of the hypnosis stage was learning about past life regressions. I thought, this is where I want to go, and I can use my interest in the paranormal from that. So I was doing ghost tours with Lynn for a while, but I stopped because I really wanted to just fully focus to really kind of know and absorb NLP, hypnotherapy. I mean, I am dyslexic, so I've got a lot of audio books here. There's also other books, and you know, I just like to just absorb different ways people do, because I don't think you can ever stop learning.
No.
So I kind of answered that in a completely roundabout way.
Perfect.
So I hope that's okay. But
no, that's
how I got
perfect.
into it.
So do you want to? It's very interesting what you say about neuro-linguistic programming. Obviously, that's your thing, and you've connected it there directly with hypnosis. But obviously, it can be used for other things. My own you know, when I've come up against neuro-linguistic programming, it's often in a very nefarious way. So say perhaps a government may want to make you believe something, and they will roll out the NLPs in order to make you believe that, and in some cases very successfully. So do you want to sort of reassure me that NLPs are not always carried out for nefarious purposes?
Well, I think it's a little bit like a hammer. You could use a hammer to build up wonderful furniture, even a house. You know, I mean, not the whole house with a hammer, but you can use it for good. You can also use it to smash windows and smash things down. And I think that's very much like NLP. But the way I like to think about it is that we are hypnotized all the time. We see on television and wish we could be like somebody else. Also, as well, we go into a hypnotic state throughout the day anyway. We're not always just in full consciousness. We kind of go down to that alpha as we're driving. So we all kind of veer at a suggestible state. But I tell you how it could potentially be used for not so good purposes, and I'll tell you the sort of things that I use in. So the kind of sort of, I think it depends where somebody's moral compass lies. But for example, if you were somebody in a shop and you were selling, say, like a TV, one of the techniques, which I don't teach it, but some people teach, is that you would have the television next to you and say, so did you decide to just come in today, or were you walking by? And when they say by, they tap the TV, so you can put in little suggestions like that. But the way I kind of would done it with, like, in the more business setting, is to really truly listen to people, get to know what they like, because each of us experience the world in different ways. Some people are what called more visual, so the way they like to connect with people in the world is through vision, through language. So it'd be like, I see what you mean, that kind of sort of talking. Loud and clear is another one, or get a grasp of that. You kind of, you know, the different sorts, so you've got the hearing, the seeing, the feeling. So it's kinesthetic sort of feelings, visual or auditory. We kind of put into those sorts of bases. There's also digital people, and you'll see them going around. They're the ones in the shop taking notes. But I would kind of use it to teach somebody to listen to what they want. So if you're a second-hand car salesman or brand new car salesman, is really hear what the person wants to have and listen to their language, so you can help them get the car that they want. So, you know, if you're saying how wonderful it is and it goes 0 to 60 in how long, and they want comfort, if you're selling them the 0 to 60, you're not going to get them. But if you're in that sort of frame of mind, you actually go, this is what they want, and I'm going to talk about what they want. And the way I always help people as well, when they do come in, if I do give any little tips of NLP to the salespeople, is to think, I like this person, I want to help this person, I want to be the best that I can be. And like, again, the sales from it is kind of obviously good for them, but it's not forcing people to get it. But you know, you can use it sort of positively as well. You can sort of embed suggestions in with the hypnosis to make them feel better about themselves, because if they kind of feel like they're a shy person, they have incredibly low self-esteem, you can embed certain suggestions. I mean, one of the ones which is used in some trade, because when I kind of think these things, I'm not like saying, I'll come it straight away. I have to kind of think it through, and usually put it then into the hypnosis after. But you could sort of say like, I was going past a car, and on the car there was a scratch, and I was wondering if it was your car. And then I thought, no, it wasn't. So I decided to head home. So you're basically embedded, scratch your head, but you can do that in a positive way, like your self-esteem is increasing, or like you are beautiful. Because so many people, even the most stunning people, just don't think they're beautiful, do they? So you just kind of embed those things. But I always do what the person wants, and it's good to get the clear goal. So when somebody comes to me, I set what's called a well-formed outcome. So what do they really want? They said, I want to actually look in the mirror and feel, you know, yeah, you're right. I like this person I see back at the mirror. So I will just get their direction and fit it towards where they want to go.
I mean, we are bombarded, like you say, every day with the narrative from left, right, and centre. Even, I mean, I know Neil you don't have a TV, do you? I don't have a TV, and that was part of shutting down on that kind of external narrative. But even then, you know, it's billboards, it's radio, it's, you know, other people's whatever it is, it's shop windows, or, you know, or hugely they use those suggestive qualities, don't they, to infiltrate us. And we forget that we have the power to change our own narrative, and that kind of thing often needs to be an external thing, doesn't it, that somebody else helps to reprogram the brain. For me, I was terrified about hypnosis for a very long time, and equally terrified and hated street magician. So I don't like sleight of hand stuff. It just frustrates the bejesus out of me. And then along came Derren Brown and totally and utterly changed my perception. And one of the interesting things that I found about Derren Brown was, as you know, he does talk about implanting positive narration within somebody's brain to get them on board. And one thing he came out with years after I was watching him, I think I've said this before, but he came on and he apologized basically to everybody for falling in love with him. He said, you know, that there are a lot of people out there who find me incredibly attractive, and you have to ask yourself, do you actually find me attractive? And all this time I was thinking, he's quite hot, he's not my type, you know. And then he said, I have literally been using bits of power of persuasion and all kinds of little bits of behavioral ways of dealing with the situation, and I've kind of made you all find me attractive because it makes my job easier. And at that point I was like, holy shit, I thought that I wasn't, you know, I thought I was quite a fortress to such things, but here was this guy who, you know, was definitely not my type, and I'd been suckered in. And it amazed me from there on in about just narrative and how people talk, and the immense power that has on us in these kind of, going back to the paranormal. So what you learn in terms of that side of things. Has that informed how you look at the paranormal and how you deal with paranormal situations?
It can do. I mean, I certainly, and you must know people like it as well. I mean, everybody that, particularly when it's a paid public event, the important thing is that they have a good time. But I have seen people that anything is literally a ghost, and you can sometimes, particularly if there's like table tilting, the suggestions, once people start to believe it's happening, then it tends to start working more. I'm quite thinking that it's probably a bit of both. Sometimes it is subconscious muscular movements. Other times it is actually that, you know, maybe they are picking up on something. One really interesting experiment which was shown to me, and I've done it before, and it has worked, is you have a pack of playing cards, and if there's, say, 6 people around a table and they're doing table tilting, or it could be Ouija board, blast moving, whatever people choose, you basically hand out a card to each person. In one of the cards is the Joker, and you get the person who has the Joker to actually move the table, move the glass, and then you put it away, and you hand the cards out again. Somebody else gets the Joker, and you do that as many times as you like. I usually about 3, 4, 5 times. Then you have an extra card in your pocket. So basically then leave the Joker behind and hand everybody a playing card. The Joker doesn't appear, but because they have the belief that it is going to move, it moves. So belief plays a massive part in hypnosis. It can play a part in the paranormal as well. So I think that you just have to be sort of careful. And I think when you do a paranormal investigation, is to, particularly if you're getting something come through on the spirit box, Ovulus, is to kind of go with it, because you might begin that real communication from spirit, but then afterwards put your rational head on it. I mean, if you hear a bang, it's good to run off and find out what it's like, if it's safe to do so, to find out what it is, rather than just kind of go, well, we'll just carry on here. But if you're getting that communication with the Ovulus, just act as if it's true, and then go back and be more skeptical on it afterwards, because I think that sometimes if you become too skeptical, it can put a dampener on things. You must know Chris Romer, CJ.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. He was saying that somebody that he knew was quite skeptical, but nothing ever happened around where he was. And this was going around with the big, massive video cameras. And I think it was the toilet lid, if I remember, it was banging up and down in this one haunted location. And somebody grabs their camera, this one that is quite skeptical, and then it happens to, finally, I'm going to see something, grabs the camera, goes into the toilet, and it stops before they get there, and never actually sees anything. So I think that if you lock yourself down as well, you can shut yourself off from experiencing things.
So
Yeah,
that's okay. So that's really interesting. So, and segueing off from what you've just been talking with, that kind of everyday NLP kind of work and suggesting, how do you think that hypnosis proper can be worked into paranormal investigation? I'm thinking, I mean, my main correlative for this is the alien abduction phenomenon, where people, you know, the most famous, such as John Mack and Bud Hopkins, is that his name? Yeah, Bud Hopkins. Basically, you know, people with missing time or whatever, they'd seen something strange, they have missing time, they have a blackout, and they hypnotize them, and sure enough, they're having very similar kind of that sort of typical alien abduction scenario. And just interestingly, between those two, I mean, they came up with very different interpretations, those two people. Bud Hopkins was very much of the opinion that this was all metal and bolts, UFO aliens coming down and taking people for whatever purposes they were taking them for. Whereas John Mack went along the psychological kind of Jungian route, where yes, this was happening to you subjectively, but it was only happening to you in your consciousness. Your body was going nowhere, but that doesn't mean it's not real. It just means it's a very different experience. So I'm just using that as an example, that particular phenomenon, which I'm quite familiar with in terms of how to use. Some people would say the alien abduction phenomenon isn't paranormal, but it is, isn't it? It is a type of paranormal experience. So I'm used to it being used, and I think very usefully in that kind of scenario. Can you think of can you expand on how else it could possibly be used in any kind of parapsychology?
Right. Well, I mean, the obvious thing, what I do a lot is the past life regression. You can use it to tap into place memory, as Kate, you've seen with your friend Barry Guy. You can use it for that. So it's not going back in their lifetime, but going back in a time scale. And if you think about it, that there's even scientists that aren't sure that time goes on in a linear fashion. It's all kind of squiggly, all happening at the same time, so that the potential for something to drop into where they are back in time is a possibility, most definitely. Other things that can be done to use it to enhance people's psychic ability, psychometry, particularly if they're not so good. And it's only saying, so I can't say, oh, I've got this fantastic, because it's just saying I'm getting into at the moment. But to hold something, see how they're getting any hits with it. And what would be better if they're not very good at all at it, and then they're hypnotized to increase that belief in themselves and really tap into, add in suggestions as well about going into the vibration, because a lot of people believe it's stuff with vibration, then seeing if there's more corroboration then afterwards. Definitely tapping into seeing more ghosts, actually the potential of seeing ghosts whilst they're there, as a medium would see them. I mean, something which I really want to try and experiment is to, and I can't remember the method of it, it's actually not one of my favorite techniques in the paranormal, but where somebody puts the headphones on, they're listening to the spirit box, and then people ask them questions, and the person with the headphones on answers. I always like to actually have it where you hear the recording as well at the same time, so you can see if it actually corroborates up. I don't believe that the people are making it up, but the trouble is it's one interpretation of it, because we hear spirit box communication, it's, oh, it didn't say any of those, it said this particular one. But would be maybe to have someone with just white noise or just some distracting noise, and then ask the question, and then see, so it's like a human way of doing this, so a human spirit box, and see if they can pick up just purely by listening to like maybe some meditation music, really getting them to go there, and just when names come up, for it to come up like that. So that's something I want to sort of experiment with more. But I think that it was basically through Jane and Barry that I thought, because it was just past life regression, occasional life between lives, and working with people in the hypnotic field just because they want to quit smoking or become more confident or whatever it would be. There's this fear of frogs. I've had that before. So I just kind of think, there's so much more potential out there to actually experience with the paranormal. I have done it because I've also learned stage hypnosis. So I have done what's called negative hallucinations with people, and that's where they no longer can see something. And basically you're tapping into, so negative hallucination means it's something horrible. It means you can't see. So they won't be able to see that cup. They won't be able to see a particular person. And you're tapping into that time. Have you ever had it where you think, where's my glasses, or where's my mug, or something, my wallet, and you're looking on the table, you can't find it anywhere, you pull everything up, and you go back to it a minute later and find it just sitting there on there anyway. So you're basically tapping into those times where people just have that blink and they don't see something. There's a very interesting effect when you do it. It's not paranormal, it's just kind of what can happen with people's minds. But you can always tell if somebody's faking negative hallucination. If they're faking a hallucination and you put like a little stool in front of them and say, just come to me. If they're faking it, they will walk and go, oh, I've hit it. If they actually really generally can't see it. There's something in the mind that is always protecting you, keeping you safe. Your subconscious mind is always doing that for you, and they will find a way around it. They will find a little crumb on it. What's this? And basically they'll end up not hitting and potentially hurting themselves because their conscious mind is alerting them to the danger.
Oh, we in this house we say it's the fairies that do that. You know,
yes.
you put your glasses down, you can't find them. It's not that you're not looking for it properly. It's the fairies have definitely taken.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm with you on the. I mean, the sensory deprivation stuff within the paranormal just really piques my interest, and it's become ever increasingly popular. To do those kind of experiments. I think it was Hellier, definitely the first series that really kind of it shot people's interest through the roof on doing the sensory deprivation. They did some work with the God helmet as well, which I just suddenly went, wow, this is taking it to another level, because you know, having that, somebody having a God helmet on who is asking questions back and forth to somebody who's got the SB7 and the sensory deprived. It was just mind-blowing, because there's no room for any kind of doubt, because both parties are deprived in different ways. That sounds really bad, doesn't it? But I know I know that from being I've done it the first time I had a long session doing the SB7 sensory deprivation. I actually felt like I had floated out of the room, and it frightened me. I felt like everybody had left, and that I was then just in a black void, and I no longer heard what was coming through on the spirit box at all. And at that point I freaked out, and I ripped the headphones off and ripped the eye mask off. This is what we get up to, Neil. You know, we go out there and we put these blindfolds on, and it's all crazy stuff. You'd love it. But when I came out of that, I think one thing that I did learn about it was the dangers of time limitation, of leaving people in these states of you know, states of being. Could you talk us through some of the kind of the danger points that people, because I know that people are starting to play around with these different theories, aren't they, about hypnosis, self-hypnosis, you know, going into deep meditation, going into astral plane work, sensory deprivation. What are the dangers, you know, the actual immediate dangers to people, not spiritually, but actually, what are the dangers to people?
I think as long as you don't have really bad depression, or have like literally, you know, you get some sort of psychosis anyway, that really wouldn't be the ideal time to do that. But I find that it's a natural state to get into anyway. So as long as you're careful enough, you know, with what you're doing, I think that I'm interested in experimenting, but you know, I think it depends on the person you're with at the moment, and if they would be able to take those sorts of things. We had Neil talking about the alien abductions, and I did have one person who had an alien abduction. They said I can tell people, but they don't want it going out on like any lives and stuff. So I'll tell you both afterwards. It's an incredible story, but I'll tell you after the live is finished. But they didn't really get much from it apart from being led down on something cold and lots of lights going. That's basically, it was one of my earlier ones. So I know a lot more techniques now. I think one of the dangers a lot with this is suggestion. Like when I do the past life regression, I'll just say about going to a certain age, moving forward, moving backward, go to a good memory, a memory time when you learned a valuable lesson, and not to expect anything, like, because if I say to somebody, whatever you do now, don't be aware of where your feet are right now, think of anything else but where your feet are, you're going to start thinking about your feet, because you just can't help but think you block out the not word and hear feet and just go straight to that. So if somebody's in hypnosis and it's looking like it's going in a certain way, I won't influence somebody. And like there was one, Charlene, it was part of one of the lives. They're on a boat. It looked like it wasn't going to end well, particularly as well, which is interesting in the past life regression. Not everybody, but a lot of people, when you go past the death experience, they say, I can't see it, it's gone blank. And then you go back then afterwards, but you still don't want to assume that that person died in this way. They were Viking, they were on board a ship, and it was stormy, and it looked like it was going to end for everybody on it, but you don't know, so you don't go, so when did the ship sink then? You know, you then put that suggestion in somebody's head, so you have to make sure that you say to somebody, so explain what happens now, and don't add those suggestions in. Of course, some humans, sometimes a little mistake goes in. I actually find it interesting, a lot of people in hypnosis go, no, it's this instead. So yeah, I think the sort of biggest danger with it really is that the person might not be, they've been in a very fragile state to experience those things. So that's why I get people to sign a form. That's why I have a little chat with people before these things. But nobody can ever get stuck in hypnosis. That is one of the biggest worries that people have with hypnosis. There is an interesting state that you can get people into called the Esdale's coma state, and it's taking people to a really, really super deep level of hypnosis. It's something that I do with people actually in the chair. You put in hypnosis, out of hypnosis, taking them down level, taking them further down, and it's an amazing feeling when people are in that place. So quite often people say, this is amazing, I don't want to come out of this. But there are ways of getting people out of that hypnosis, not in a negative way, but in a positive way, because, you know, basically they will come out of it eventually, but you could be wasting a good extra hour or something because people are enjoying it too much. But when people, just as a side issue, when people are in that Esdale coma state, they have something called catalepsy. So that's if I was to lift up their arm and just let it, it will just be hanging there like this, and they will be completely, their muscles balanced, and just be happy just to stay out in hypnosis with their arm up like this for an indefinite amount of time. Wow. But because it could actually, maybe when they come out, go, oh, because I've seen people on TV have that done to them. It's one way of people, some hypnotists just test it in hypnosis. They basically put their arm out and do a regression or something and leave them there the whole time. They like come from out after and go, oh, my shoulder. But their arm will stay there quite happily. And it's brilliant as well because you can also get anesthesia from it. So you basically you get absolutely zero pain. So during the training, they get people to pinch the back of your hands, and if you yelped, you know you weren't deep enough yet.
So sorry, Kate.
No, go on.
So we definitely want to talk about past life regressions. You just mentioned it there. That'll be great to get onto. But just to step back a moment before we do you think that mediumship is a form of self-hypnosis, where they put themselves into that hypnotic state through whatever means in order to see a bigger picture, see whatever they're saying? Do you think that's a form of hypnosis?
Not being a medium, I don't fully know, but from what I've seen, I would say yes, that they are putting themselves in that slight kind of meditative state. I know a lot of mediums will do meditation beforehand. Also as well, when I've got all the lives, whether they're via the internet or whether they're sitting down in the chair, I always go into a state of hypnosis with the person, because you then can access your unconscious mind at the same time. So from what I've seen with the way mediums seem to act, I'd say yes, there might be like a light trance, so not a very deep one, but I think that to me it looks like they're reaching those sorts of levels.
That's interesting. I think that can also be expanded to something that Kate and I often talk about, obviously, on this channel, and that's non-human intelligent entity encounters. We would usually call them fairies, and the usual language I use for both my own experiences and when I'm talking about other people's experiences is that in order to see that entity or hear it or come into contact with it in any way, you need to be in an altered state of consciousness. But I think actually, well, I guess there are different altered states of consciousness, but being hypnotized is certainly one of them. And I would put it, very closely related to something like a psychedelic experience, where obviously that's you're bringing that about in a different way than hypnosis, but the results can be very, very, very similar. And you just mentioned meditation. That's again, I know you don't think meditation is hypnosis, but it's just another form of altering your state of consciousness.
It is.
To be able to be able to see things, understand things in a different way than consensus normal waking reality.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think that I think everybody should experience hypnosis. Maybe start with meditation, because I know people that, I'm going completely off here, but I know people that regularly meditate. It's their frontal cortex, the part that the front of the mind. Basically, it starts growing more neural pathways through meditation, and also like every single person, no matter what it's been, even if it's been a past life which has been not particularly nice, one comes out afterwards and say, that was an amazing experience. I've never had somebody, but you tell some people, that you're a hypnotist, and they kind of look at you, and you just suddenly see the fear in their eyes. And it's like they think you're going to just suddenly just put them under like any second, which of course I wouldn't do. It's you've got to get the consent from
Hold
somebody.
on, Neil. This is where Paul clicks his fingers and we both pass over our bank details to him, isn't it? Because we both had the pleasure of having past life regression through Paul. It was for both of us. I think I don't want to speak on Neil's behalf. I'm sure he'll talk about it in a minute, but it was an incredible experience. I have had past life repression. That was a bit,
Freudian slip.
I have had past life regression before, but the one that I did with you was it was very, very interesting, and I think there were lots of different elements there, I think, for me, that made it very interesting. And following on from what Neil was just saying, you were just discussing about being in those altered states of consciousness and coming across entities and energies that are not in a material form. I mean, this for me is where things get really, really interesting, between the science of hypnosis and knowing and understanding the qualities that it can produce, in the fact that that it can be a very positive effect on us, or it can be a very negative effect on us. It's that in science it's not really talked about in terms of where are you. Who are those people that you're coming across? What is that reality? Because when you're in it, it is as strong and as material as the world that we are in now. It's like when you're in a very vivid dream and you can touch things and smell things and taste things. When you're under hypnosis for a past life regression, although there is part of you that understands that that's the state that you're in, it is still very real. So what is that? That's the big question. Who have you got any thoughts about that? It's a massive subject though, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I always like to be, because I've got all the books, but I'm always somebody who doesn't really come across a conclusion specifically. I mean, I've talked about Dr. Ian Stevenson's work quite a lot. Ian Stevenson was somebody who went around the world investigating children with spontaneous past life claims. And there's a lot of things so a spontaneous past life is where a child is just beginning to speak, and they will say, when I was big, or I want to go back to my real mother, because they still see their previous life as their mother. But I kind of interpret a lot of what he does into the kind of work that I do. So you said he come across very, very little cases of fraud, and particularly when people pay money. I mean, why would you pay me money just to make things up? It doesn't make sense. But some people say it could be fantasy, and some people say maybe it's your subconscious mind coming up with a metaphor to help you. Other people say that it can be like the memories of what you were taught in school, read in books, and under hypnosis it just gets reproduced. I always make sure I record it, so it's not, people don't actually credit more in the past life than they've actually said. And also sometimes people can forget from the past life as well. So that's some of the more sort of skeptical sort of thinking behind it. But he sort of said it could be genetic memory. So maybe people are tapping into their genetic memory whilst they're under hypnosis. It could also be some form of channeling. That's another possibility, that it's banned around in sort of spiritual circles and mediums of the Akashic field, but people don't really know where memories are within in the brain. I know that they had it's a horrible experiment, and I hope it doesn't upset anybody watching this now, but I know they had a maze where they were training rats to go through in this maze, and basically they were removing bits of the rat's brain slowly by slowly. Even though the rats in the end could barely pull themselves through the maze, they still remembered the maze. I've known somebody, I've mentioned this story several times, it's quite funny, but a friend of mine, one of his uncles had a liver transplant, and afterwards, where he didn't care about what clothes he wore, he suddenly became very fussy about what clothes he wears, so there could be memory from that. But Ian Stevens said it could actually be a genuine sort of past life that somebody's got. So I always keep exploring, always keep asking questions, and I think the more I do it, it's not really answering, I end up having more questions. But everybody loves a mystery, and I think that if you'd say to have the answers to everything, how boring would that be? So I think just keep exploring and enjoy the fascination that is hypnosis and regressions, past life regressions of people.
Absolutely. It's having done that with you a few weeks ago, I won't talk too much about it. People can go and see it on your regression channel.
Thank you.
As they can see Kate's as well. But the overwhelming feeling for me was that it was like a dream. It was like a dream state when you were there. And as you both said, you're aware that you're laying down or sitting down, and that you are talking to me and talking me through the regression. But at the same time, you were really there, just as in a dream. And in a dream, you believe all those people and the environment, the actions is actually happening in that dream. That's exactly what it was like. And I hadn't quite prepared myself for that. And it was also like a dream. Once I came back and watched the video over, I realized I'd forgotten that just gone out of my head, that some quite important things that happened in that regression, just as in a dream, boom, gone within 5 seconds of coming out of it. And again, I don't want to keep talking about psychedelics, but there's a similarity to that as well. When you're on a high dose psychedelic, you will immerse yourself into another world, and you won't remember everything that comes back from it, but you will remember the feeling. Same with the dream, psychedelic state, past life regression. The biggest thing is that feeling. And for me, I won't talk about my regression too much, but I was basically in the 19th century, the early 19th century. And what you've just been saying about, did I read that in a Thomas Hardy novel? Well, maybe I did. Maybe that's part of it. But the feeling that I really was in the early 19th century was so strong that I can't just dismiss that as, oh, well, you're just regurgitating some 19th century novel that you read 10 years ago. It's not quite like that. So that was the biggest feeling I got from that regression. I don't know whether that's sort of a common motif.
No, it is. And because I spoke a little bit afterwards about it, but Natalie Emmons, who is psychology at Boston University, she had her children speak to both urban and rural children of Ecuador. And what she did in the experiment, she just wanted to see what children felt before birth. And they were shown 3 drawings, one that of a lady, one that of a pregnant lady, and one with a lady and an infant. And the children would say, I know this isn't your mummy, I know this isn't your mummy carrying you, and I know this isn't you as a baby, let's just pretend that it is. But there was a lot of corroboration coming out from the children that were very similar. They would sort of say that it was more feelings they were getting, and saying they knew that they'd be created, they wished to be born. And what I have noticed, I've not really asked many people what's come in hypnosis with me if they've tried psychedelics, but it is particularly in the life between lives moment, it becomes less of what they're seeing at that point, apart from the initial bit when they cross over and they see their family, friends coming towards them, it tends to be just more of a intense feeling of just joy and an intense feeling of just everything's okay right now, just in this moment, everything's fine.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was I say I'm not going to keep talking about psychedelics, but once again, it's and I didn't mention this on the live stream because it's a different program you're having, and I thought people might not particularly like it, but it's when my avatar in that past life was passed over and died. The experience there, as you're saying, was this feeling of beautiful peace, kind of womb-like, just wonderful, the most relaxed state you can possibly imagine, and very like a ketamine state, very like a high dose ketamine state. In fact, I would say it's almost identical. And there have been a lot of studies sort of matching the ketamine experience to the near-death experience as well. And so maybe those types of psychedelics are tools to sort of prepare us for what comes after death. That's just speculation, but yeah, it was a superbly relaxing, beautiful place to be. And I have noticed that there are quite a few other people, Kate included, I believe, get almost exactly that same thing.
Definitely, I did. I very much felt like in the first instance, after the darkness, I was sort of floating around in the universe, but the universe was sort of the Milky Way colours, and then it went very womb-like, and it was absolutely lovely. I think one of the things that I find incredibly positive about past life regression, even though people will often go into past lives that are perhaps not as exciting as they wanted it to be, or as ferocious as they wanted it to be, or when I had my past life regression with you, I came out tiny bit disappointed that it hadn't have been a bit more spectacular. I didn't want to be Cleopatra, but just something, it felt very mundane. But it wasn't until I reflected on it about what the key points from the feelings that I was getting from it, the key points, and how that reflected to my life right now, that I needed those messages. Do you find that people do get those kind of experiences when they come out?
They do, and despite what a lot of people who are very skeptical about it say, it's not that somebody absolutely loves, say, the medieval period and they go back. Occasionally it happens that way, but mostly they'll say something, I love Roman history, I'm just obsessed with Roman history, I think I'm going to be, Roman, and they go back and find out they were chimney sweeping. It's like, oh no. But it's what they get out of it does help them move forward, and whether it is that they are tapping into a genuine past life, whether it's their subconscious mind. And I've got a wonderful book, Spiritual Hypnosis, that I'm going through at the moment. But everybody that has these sort of experiences just comes out afterwards feeling like the experience was just right for them in that moment and is profoundly helpful to them.
So thinking about, it's just triggered me thinking about Neil, it wasn't the stone tape thing that you sent me, the 70s one, about the girl's grave.
The Girl's Grave. I can't remember the name of the actual. It was one of these series again from the 1970s, which was sort of a docudrama, part documentary, part drama, which was based on based on a regression from the 70s, where a girl actually from Merseyside was regressed, not initially as a past life regression, but she found herself back in a past life, and it matched very, very closely the life and the death of a young servant girl in Devon. I cannot remember the name of the. There's still a grave to her.
It's very famous in the paranormal circles, and I cannot think of it either.
No, I can't. But that docudrama, it was actually very good. Typical 1970s again. All smoking ciggies and big flares, brilliant. But as I say, that was based on a real case, and which has never properly been debunked. This girl from Merseyside definitely had no connection with with Devon, no family there or anything. Do you find that, do you find those kind of connections? I mean, my own regression, there were a couple of slightly uncanny things that I found out afterwards. Do you find that
I was wondering if I had a book which actually mentions that. I'm just I've got this one. I'll tell you what I love about this. So this is this book here, Encounters with the Past. Peter Moss and Joe Keaton. I don't know whether that's you can only find these on eBay now. And I'll tell you what I do love about this. Where is it? And so I'll get back to the question in a second. But it has these records in there as well, which is just amazing. So, you know, I love vinyl, you know, my DJ side of things. So, yeah, that got me well excited. But compelling ones, I mean, there's been several quite compelling ones. I mean, one on my channel, for example, is the one by Steve from the Paradox Club, Steve Mulligan, who went back to being Sidney Sutcliffe. And not just the regression is the fact that when he was a child, he was able to find his way around Llandudno, even though he'd never been there before. And what was really interesting, because him and his girlfriend Sharon went to Llandudno to just take a look at some of the sites, because they were just really gripped and fascinated by it. They were following the sat nav because they should go to where his house used to be, and the sat nav said to go straight on, and Steve said, I think it's left here, and Sharon was like, no, it's straight on. Oh, okay, so they carried straight on. If they had gone left, they would have found it where the sat nav actually took them to the wrong place. So that is really, really compelling. I've had somebody who was on in a U-boat on like a submarine, and I've forgotten the name of the boat now, and I remember probably as soon as the line's finished, quite a reasonably well-known one, a German boat. And you know, he actually wasn't one of the survivors because he died in the water in this past life. It was 1940s, Second World War. He was a German in the Second World War, and it was really compelling. I was doing this was a live one that I was doing, and the person that I chose, I chose him because I get people to put their hands up, and people kind of then put their hands down. You know, when we kind of select them through which ones to see. I do know this person, which unfortunately some people, because it was so compelling, thought the whole thing was set up, which is a lesson to me not to pull somebody out that I know. But I can honestly, hand on heart, say that he's a genuine person. He wouldn't make things up, and he's not really into the sort of strange stuff, but he came along to support me and had quite a compelling past life. But whilst he was talking about his father when he was younger, and his father was like mending clocks, and I said, what clock are you mending at the moment? He said, a Nosberg clock, which is quite a decorative type clock. And after he sort of finished, he got his phone, let's have a look at this. And he actually came up that there was such a thing called a Nosberg clock, which pretty much looked like space similar, because there was different styles, I think, but pretty similar to what he was describing in the regression. So either that is, yes, you know, so the believing thing is either he tapped into the Akashic field, he's doing some sort of channeling, or, you know, it was a genuine past life. If you're being more skeptical, the way that it would happen, the only way I can think of, maybe the Antiques Roadshow was on. It doesn't really put rank to it, but everybody that don't watch the Antiques Roadshow has come across the Antiques Roadshow at one point in their life. And they were talking about an Nosberg clock, and he might have not taken it in consciously, but subconsciously, then when the hypnosis, he was able to retell this Nosberg clock. Whichever way, even if it is that skeptical, and I still think that's pretty brilliant and exciting as well.
I thought we'd froze then. I thought we'd had a moment of froze. I was so enthralled with what you were saying. I was actually I was thinking then when you were saying about the Antiques Roadshow, if that was the case though, I was off in Antiques Roadshow and thinking, if that was the case, every bit of subliminal messaging that you get could potentially be brought up in a past life regression. So, but the chances of somebody being able to put together such an intricate narrative just around maybe one or two things that they've unconsciously picked up, that's not going to happen, surely. I mean, the statistics on that would be mind-blowing.
I don't know about that. I'm gonna.
Oh, go on, you be devil's advocate.
I'm gonna do my Scully. I'm gonna do my Scully to your Mulder here.
Go on then.
think about dreams. Make the comparison with dreams. You make up extremely intricate stories within your dreams that you would think, my goodness, how did I do that? And within those dreams, sometimes objects such as a clock or whatever that has sunk into your subconscious suddenly come out to that dream and get minutely integrated within the story of that dream, which could be similar to that. I can see you smiling, Kate.
I am. I'm going to counteract you. I'm going to counter. We've never done this before. We've never had an online. I'm sorry, Paul, about this, but I'm going to counteract you with that one by saying that in a dream you would probably end up with the clock as your head. And you wouldn't have any connection to a U-boat. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying when you're in a past life regression, the connections are so, you can find things that are documented that you wouldn't have known, the very slight nuances of that. In a dream, of course, you do connect all these things in a narrative that makes sense. But when you past life in, when you have these incredible past life experiences, there's no way that you can. I mean, let's look at yours very, very briefly. You were saying people's names like that and dates like that, and when things happen like that, that wasn't a dream. You weren't wandering around with the clock as a head. You were a real person, real time, having real experiences.
Yeah, no, I'm not sorry, this is turning into the Mulder and Scully show. Let's just say that all of those possibilities are possible, and I'm going to leave it at that.
Definitely. I think on that, Paul, before me and Neil get into a complete rant about this, I think we are just about at the time. I think it's been absolutely fascinating, and I think we could go on for hours and explore this. It's not just past lives, the hypnosis, your whole thing about it, your love of paranormal. Where can people find you is the first question. And do you call people clients when you have, or sitters?
Yeah, I call them clients. I think that's kind of what people usually like. So yeah, they call them clients. So thank you. If people wanted to go to my website, it's paulgoddardnlp.co.uk. So that's www.paulgoddardnlp.co.uk. They can find me on several channels on YouTube. I've got one which is Paul Goddard. That has got quite a few numbers. That is a completely and utterly random channel, all sorts of random things on it. I have Past Life Regressions with Paul Goddard. I have a Facebook called Paul Goddard Past Life Regressions, but YouTube is where I'm mainly at. So Past Life Regressions with Paul Goddard. I've got another one on YouTube called Paul Goddard NLP and Hypnotherapy, and that's got a few regressions on it, but I thought some people who want just the self-help kind of didn't really enjoy the past life side of things. I also had people email me saying I find a little place in hell waiting for me, because it just completely went against their beliefs, because they kind of were incredibly religious and really didn't like the fact that I was doing that. You're saying I work with demons. Anyway, I digress. So so Paul Goddard NLP and Hypnotherapy, and I've also just started one which is Paul Goddard Paranormal. So that's all the different channels that people can find me on. I'm on Facebook. I do befriend people if they are interested, but it's always nice to be jotted a little message to say that you see where you've seen me, because you must get all the time. You get all sorts of friend requests. You think, I don't know this person, where do I know them from? And sometimes it's not, they don't even know anybody else I know, so you can't sort of check up that way. But I'm on Facebook, YouTube quite a lot. But if people are interested, feel free to drop me a short email if you just want to ask some questions. I do get sometimes where people like give me a massive, great big long thing. I won't have time to go through all that. Something else I must mention as well, if anybody's got a terminal illness, then I allow one slot a week for me to work with them. It's not saying I'm going to cure you, but like with the situation with my dad, I think that if you want to give it a go, then I think that it's good to, it's nice to have that, as I said, that belief that something could potentially happen instead of false hopelessness.
Yeah, that's lovely. That is lovely that you do that. That's so that is so nice. That is so nice. Bless you. Wow. So future for you, is there anything exciting happening this year for you? Are you out and about at different events? What are you doing?
I've got Parameet coming up. I get asked for events fairly regularly. I haven't got anything in the pipeline at the moment, but I'm hoping to do more lives, and my NLP channel and all the different channels I'm hoping to work more and more on.
Yeah, and you was just saying before we came on air about the paranormal YouTube that you were doing, where very much to my delight, you're going back to a very old school way of investigating and actually talking to people who have had experiences. And is that going to be a regular thing out on your YouTube?
Yeah, so I'm hoping to get it done as once a week as much as possible. So
wow.
yeah, we'll see. But I'm not saying it's definitely going to be once a week. I'd rather do something which was of good quality than not so good.
Yeah, definitely. Wow. So busy year, and
yes.
as we know, after this month, things do pick up and start sort of filling up our diaries. So if anybody wants to get in contact with Paul, then we'll drop some links down below of where you can find him. And definitely, I can recommend him definitely for the past life regression. It was an incredible experience. So if anybody does want to get hold of him for that, then yeah, definitely recommended. So thank you so much for your time, Paul. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm sure we could talk for hours, and I'd love to get you back towards the end of the year. Maybe even do one from Parameet. Have a chat from Parameet.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, because we're both going to be there, so we can sit in the pub.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I like the sound of that, most definitely.
Brilliant. Thanks, Neil. And we will see you very. Oh, I've got to do the whole kind of hit subscribe and ring a bell and whatever else it is, and sub, and you know what it all is. So thank you very much for watching, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Did you hear me okay then?